The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February 19th and March 26th, 1945, was one of the most iconic and brutal battles of World War II. Situated in the Pacific, Iwo Jima was a small volcanic island that held immense strategic importance for both the United States and Imperial Japan. The island's capture would provide a critical airbase for the United States to launch bombing raids on Japan and allow damaged B-29 bombers to make emergency landings. However, Japan's fierce defense turned the battle into one of the most intense and costly confrontations in the Pacific theater. This is the story of the Battle of Iwo Jima. The strategic importance of Iwo Jima. By early 1945, the United States had made significant gains in the Pacific, capturing key islands and steadily pushing back the Japanese Empire. The American strategy of island hopping aimed to capture strategically important islands and use them as stepping stones toward the eventual invasion of Japan. Iwo Jima, located halfway between the Mariana Islands and the Japanese mainland, was critical for several reasons. The island's airfields could be used by Japanese fighter planes to intercept American bombers on their way to bomb Japan. Additionally, the airfields could serve as a base for American aircraft, allowing for more frequent and effective bombing raids on the Japanese home islands. The Japanese were fully aware of Iwo Jima's significance and had spent months fortifying the island. Under the command of Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, the Japanese defenders constructed an extensive network of underground bunkers, tunnels, and artillery positions. Rather than defending the beaches, Kuribayashi's strategy was to fight a battle of attrition, forcing the Americans to suffer heavy casualties as they advanced inland. The invasion begins. On February 19, 1945, after months of planning and preparation, the United States launched its amphibious assault on Iwo Jima. The invasion, codenamed Operation Detachment, was preceded by a massive naval bombardment that pounded the island for days, attempting to soften up the Japanese defenses. However, the bombardment had limited effect, as much of the Japanese fortifications were deeply buried underground. At 8:59 a.m., the first wave of U.S. Marines from the 4th and 5th Marine Divisions landed on the beaches of Iwo Jima. The black volcanic ash of the island made the landing difficult, as it provided little traction for vehicles and slowed the advance of the Marines. Initially, there was an eerie silence from the Japanese defenders, who had concealed their positions deep within the island. As the Marines advanced inland, the Japanese unleashed a devastating counterattack, raining artillery, mortar fire, and machine gun fire down on the American troops. The terrain of Iwo Jima, with its steep cliffs and jagged ridges, made the fighting even more difficult. Despite heavy casualties, the Marines pressed forward, determined to capture the island. The battle for Mount Suribachi. One of the first major objectives for the U.S. forces was the capture of Mount Suribachi, a dormant volcano on the southern tip of the island. Mount Suribachi provided the Japanese with a commanding view of the beaches and much of the island, making it a key position for controlling the battlefield. For several days, the Marines fought their way up the slopes of Mount Suribachi, facing relentless fire from Japanese defenders entrenched in caves and bunkers. On February 23, 1945, after intense and bloody fighting, the Marines reached the summit of Mount Suribachi. It was here that one of the most iconic moments of World War II took place, the raising of the American flag. The photograph of 6 Marines raising the flag atop Mount Suribachi, taken by Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal, became an enduring symbol of American bravery and determination. The image captured the spirit of the battle and served as a rallying point for the American public back home. However, while the flag raising was a moment of triumph, the battle was far from over. The fierce fighting inland. Following the capture of Mount Suribachi, the battle for Iwo Jima entered its most grueling phase. The Japanese defenders, following General Kuribayashi's strategy, had dug into the island's northern sectors, creating a vast network of interconnected bunkers, tunnels, and strongpoints. These fortifications allowed the Japanese to launch surprise attacks and then disappear underground, making it incredibly difficult for the Marines to advance. The fighting was brutal, with every inch of ground being fiercely contested. The Marines used flamethrowers, grenades, and demolition charges to clear out the Japanese positions, while the Japanese responded with fanatical resistance, often fighting to the death rather than surrendering. The dense terrain and hidden defenses meant that the battle was fought at close quarters, with hand-to-hand combat occurring frequently. One of the most challenging areas for the Marines was the region known as the Meat Grinder, which included heavily fortified positions such as Hill 382 and the amphitheater. The Japanese defenders made the Americans pay dearly for every advance, and casualties on both sides mounted rapidly. The cost of victory. By mid-March, after weeks of relentless fighting, the Americans had effectively secured the island. On March 16, 1945, Iwo Jima was officially declared secure, though sporadic fighting continued for several days as small pockets of Japanese soldiers continued to resist. The cost of the battle was staggering. The United States suffered over 26,000 casualties, including nearly 7,000 killed in action. For the Japanese, the battle was even more devastating. Of the 21,000 Japanese defenders, only about 1,000 were taken prisoner. The rest were either killed in battle or committed suicide to avoid capture. General Kuribayashi, true to his orders, fought until the bitter end and was never captured. Despite the heavy losses, the capture of Iwo Jima was a strategic victory for the United States. The island's airfields became crucial for American bombing raids on Japan and provided a safe haven for damaged B-29 bombers returning from missions over the Japanese mainland. The bravery and sacrifice of the Marines who fought on Iwo Jima were later honored with the creation of the United States Marine Corps War Memorial, inspired by the iconic flag-raising photo. The legacy of Iwo Jima. The Battle of Iwo Jima is remembered as one of the most intense and heroic battles in American military history. The determination of the Marines to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds and the fanatical resistance of the Japanese defenders made the battle a symbol of the wider Pacific War, a struggle characterized by immense courage, sacrifice, and suffering. For the Japanese, Iwo Jima represented the bitter realization that the war was drawing closer to their homeland. The battle demonstrated the lengths to which the Japanese military was willing to go to defend their empire, even in the face of overwhelming odds. For the Americans, it was a sobering reminder of the human cost of the Pacific Campaign and the challenges that lay ahead in the battle for Japan itself. The flag raising on Mount Suribachi remains one of the most enduring images of World War II, encapsulating the bravery, sacrifice, and ultimate victory of the United States in the Pacific. As we remember the Battle of Iwo Jima, we honor the legacy of those who fought and died on that small, desolate island in the Pacific. Conclusion. The Battle of Iwo Jima was a pivotal and costly chapter in the Pacific War. It was a battle that tested the limits of human endurance and showcased the fierce determination of both the American Marines and the Japanese defenders. The capture of Iwo Jima brought the United States one step closer to victory in the Pacific and left an indelible mark on the history of World War II. The sacrifices made on Iwo Jima will never be forgotten, and the legacy of the battle serves as a reminder of the extraordinary courage and resilience displayed by those who fought in one of the most harrowing battles of the 20th century.